Good morning. Thank you, Nick. I am so honored to be here and speak to you from my perspective, from a military spouse. I've been married to my husband for 30 years, and he's been in the military for 30 years, so this is basically all I've known. But before I go into explaining to you what a military wife is, let me give you a little bit of history. When I started off in college, I went to Virginia Tech back in the 80s. When we went back there, as you guys will know, there was no internet, there was no cell phones, right? So what we knew was from a book. So they had this thing down there called ROTC, where you wore a uniform all the time, and they were going to teach you about the military. I thought, that's what I want to do. I'm going to do that. And in 1983, they opened up they had their first Navy ROTC class. So I said, I'm going to join that. So not only was I a highty-tighty, the regimental marching band, I became the first class, Navy ROTC class. So things are progressing, we're doing well. And now I finished the first quarter, we were on quarters. I finished the first quarter, I finished the second quarter, and the third quarter, the commander came to me and offered me an all-expense paid trip for spring break. There were 7 of us. 2 females, 5 males. And I said, oh my goodness, this is great. My boyfriend of all of a month, he and his friends were going down to Fort Lauderdale for spring break. I couldn't afford that. And so I said, I've got an all-expense paid trip to Paradise Island. And my husband goes, or my boyfriend goes, Paradise Island? I said, yes, there's 7 of us going. He goes, sure it's not Paris Island? I said, it doesn't matter, it's an island. I'm going to be at the beach, and I don't have to pay for it. It's all expense paid. So I kiss him goodbye, and the 4 guys go down to Fort Lauderdale, and I'm loading up on the bus with the 7 of us, and we're headed down to the first stop was Cherry Point, North Carolina. Okay, good. It was a nice Marine base. They took us off the bus, they wined and dined us. We were treated like officers. We had DV quarters. Who knew what DV stood for? But I did that day. And they, for 3 days, treated like royalty. Then they put us back on the bus, and they made us change our outfits. I had this little white sailor cap on, and I looked like I could be on the front of a Cracker Jack box. Okay, well, if that's what we have to do to get to the beach, we're okay. So down we go, we're going to this, all of a sudden it says, welcome to Paris Island. All right, well, maybe my boyfriend was right. It was Paris Island and not Paradise Island, and I'm looking. I don't see a beach. That's all right. We pull into the parking lot, and this man with a Smokey the Bandit hat comes up on the bus and starts yelling at us. I'm thinking, oh, wow, I didn't quite sign up for this one. And he's telling us to get off the bus, and we had to line up, and we had to brace ourselves up, and he's screaming at us for reasons I still don't know. And now the fun began. There were no DV quarters. We had bunks. We were doing, they voluntold me that I was going to do something called Fire Watch. And I was like, Fire Watch? What am I watching for a fire? What is this? All night long, I'm up, and I couldn't sleep. They wouldn't let you sleep. I'm watching to make sure that there was no fire. Well, I had a picture of my boyfriend, and I'm talking to him because I had to stay awake. And I'm like, seriously, you were right. It's Paris Island. And I'm thinking, I hope you're not having a good time down there in Fort Lauderdale, and I hope you get burned. And that was the way I'm thinking. So the next morning, no sleep, we're all lined up, and this guy with the Smokey the Bandit hat came over to me. I must have done something wrong. And he told me to drop and give him 20. 20 what? So I actually said, 20 what, sir? He didn't really like that answer. And he said, 20 push-ups. I guess I was feeling a little brave that day. And I looked at him and I said, I don't do push-ups, sir. That wasn't the right answer, but he couldn't do anything because I was just a cadet. So my buddy, Dave Dargan, who doesn't speak to me anymore, ended up doing my push-ups and then 6-inch leg lifts in boots. So we were done at Paris Island, back to Virginia Tech. The very next day, I went to see my advisor, and I switched into the Air Force. I think that was probably a better move. So I did the Air Force for a couple years down at Virginia Tech, and then I fell in love with that guy that went to Fort Lauderdale, and we had to make a decision. The decision was whether we were both going to serve or one was going to serve and the other one was going to support. So we got married 30 years ago, and I chose to be the supportive spouse, and he chose to serve for the Air Force. And it was probably a better idea, because I see that even in the Air Force they do push-ups, so it's probably a very good move. So what is a military wife? Besides being a little crazy, we are a lot of things. We become a lot of things too. We become electricians, and we become contractors and daycare providers and taxi drivers. We can fix anything, or so we think we can. We are there to support, and we are there to make sure that our children's lives and our husbands' lives run kind of smoothly. And a lot of things we don't tell them. They don't need to know. We don't know how to say no. A military spouse does not know how to say no. So what happens? We end up being the room mom. We end up being the team mom. We end up being the coach of a sport that we've never played. That's okay. We're cheerleaders. We end up being president of the PTO and fundraiser coordinators. And we are just asked to do anything, because they know that if you want to get it done, you give it to a busy person. You give it to a military wife. We're very organized out of necessity. We do it without complaining. Well, you don't really see that part that much. Internally, we're complaining, believe me. And we're willing to sacrifice sleep, careers, and sometimes even our sanity. Albeit just a little moment there, but sometimes that sanity goes out the window. There are many rewards. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time as a military spouse. The camaraderie that we see when we go to a base that we know no one, we know everyone, because we're all in the same boat. We all share our same stories. We have the loneliness at times, the extreme busyness, all of the same factors tie in to our bond. We also love the traveling. I have been so fortunate to be able to travel, not be stationed, but be able to travel with my husband. And I've been to places like Germany and Australia and Hawaii 15 times. I've been to France and Norway and Ireland, Canada, England, Poland, Austria, and the Czech Republic. So I've been very fortunate to be able to travel with him. And you know what? We're pretty smart too. You do want us on your trivia team, especially if they're doing geography, because we know places like Somalia and Qatar and Zaire and Albania and Yemen and Pakistan, because that's where our spouses have been. And we travel, when we watch where they travel and try to keep tabs on them, and now they've invented this thing called the internet, so we know where they are. So we're pretty good with that too. And we, during my tenure so far as a military wife, I've gotten to do some pretty cool things. Right after 9/11, I was fortunate enough to be able to take a ride on Air Force Two. And we went right over, our mission was to go to Niagara Falls, but it was a week and a half after 9/11 happened. So we did take a detour, and we went over the Pentagon, and we saw the American flag hanging there. We went over Ground Zero and saw it still smoldering there. And we finally went to Niagara Falls. It was pretty amazing to see what other countries have done to us. And it was an experience that I will never forget. I've also gotten to eat dinner at the Vice President's house because of people that we knew, and that was pretty cool. I had no idea where they lived. I had no idea that he was up in the observatory, so it was a neat experience there. I've gotten to meet many generals. I had lunch with Laura Bush, very lovely person. And I got to tour the White House in areas that normally the regular civilian population doesn't get to see. And I got to eat in the executive dining room. So all those are so many positive things. There are some challenges, and we do it with a smile. The challenges are moving away. We know at any given moment, Uncle Sam's going to say, we need you someplace else. And we've got to be able to pick up and leave and let the family know it's okay. So I remember that fated day that my husband came home and he says, we've got an assignment. Always an exciting time. Again, early 80s, no internet. So I said, where are we going? I'm thinking, oh my goodness, are we going to Hawaii? Are we going to England? Are we going someplace foreign and fun? He goes, you're going to Lubbock, Texas. Lubbock, Texas. All right, well, let's go to that Dewey Decimal System and go find out what Lubbock, Texas is all about. Well, I found out Lubbock, Texas is home of Reese Air Force Base, home of Texas Tech, get your guns up, and home of a lot of tumbleweeds. So we spent 5 years there, had a wonderful time. It is not about the place, it's about the people, and it's a lovely place. Since we've been there, they have closed Reese Air Force Base, but Texas Tech is still there. I have my master's from there, and they're not doing so well in football, but that's all right, they'll come back. We've also had, a pitfall is not knowing where your spouse is at any given time. They have top secret clearance, they're not allowed to tell you. My husband was a pilot. So I'd ask him, where are you going? And he'd turn to me, smile, and say, watch CNN. So I got to watch CNN a lot to find out where in the world my husband was. He was on the phone one day. He doesn't tell me everything, just like I don't tell him everything. He was on the phone one day, landline, so it's not cell phone. Again, it's back in the 80s, and he's talking to his buddy. Now, one thing you have to know about pilots is it's very difficult for them to be on a phone because they talk with their hands. So I see him doing this, talking to his buddy, right? And I hear the words, yeah, I was shot at. Our plane was shot at. Well, I perked up a little bit. And he said, oh, yeah. And once he got off the phone, I'm like, what do you mean you were shot at? He said, oh, it's no big deal. We were over Somalia dropping food off for them, and they started shooting at us. He was flying a C-5. I don't know if you know what a C-5 is, but he goes, how they missed that plane, I don't know. So there's always that pitfall there. And another thing is you never know. It's day-to-day is always an adventure. Prior to having kids, my husband was, when his first job was, he was an instructor pilot. So he and his buddy are flying, they're doing a cross-country flight. Of course, we're both from Virginia Tech. His student was a graduate from Virginia Tech. So coming from Lubbock, Texas, they're going to do a cross-country tour over to the East Coast so they can go to a Virginia Tech game. All right, so they take the T-38, permission from the government, and I fly commercially over there. We go to a game, wonderful game, we won. And I go back down to Spartansburg to take my flight out because that's where they had parked their jet there. Next thing you know, maybe a couple hours later, they had taken off. I get a phone call. Janine James, to the white phone, please. I'm like, who knows that I'm here? No one knows that I'm here. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I must have left my wallet someplace, and I'm doing the Macarena check, and I've got everything. And I pick up the phone, and my husband goes, hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm okay. I go, great, so am I. I'm thinking, what the heck is he talking about? He goes, whatever you hear, don't believe everything. I said, okay. He goes, I won't be home tonight. All right. He goes, okay, oh, wait a minute. And now you hear the hospital people saying, is there a Major James someplace? He had gotten up from his hospital bed. Now I'm panicking. I'm flying back to Texas not knowing what happened. Well, his plane had lost compression, and he had to do a rapid descent, and they had to put him in oxygen, and they had all of these, they had to foam down the runway, so it was quite a production, and all he was concerned about was telling his wife that he's okay. So it was kind of a moment of, probably I shouldn't have known that until after the fact, but that's okay. So there are pitfalls with that, and being a single parent. Being a single parent, boy, I tell you, I admire all those single parents because it is not easy. We have to be the mom and the dad. We have to be the good guy and the bad guy. We have to know how to calm down the family and keep them together. My husband, being a pilot, was able to come and go, obviously, but the first 240 days of my daughter's life, he was not there. I didn't even count with the boys. When he came home, he came home. And when he told me he was going to be home on Thursday, I added 3 days because it was a C-5. C-5s always break down. And so when we were going, through this journey together, the big thing was communication. We had to know that we had to be on the same page. He's missed a lot. He's missed the fun stuff like appendicitis, 10 broken bones at any given time, contact dermatitis, which we thought was really bad, and an ambulance ride. It ended up just being something a little. After 15 doctors, they said, you're allergic to something. Car accidents and birthdays, major holidays and anniversary. But you know, one thing he's never missed was Christmas. He said, I don't care where I am, I'm flying home. And so in 30 years, he has never missed a Christmas. Another difficult time is when they do come home, because we live our lives, we go on. You know, they're not home, we can't put everything on pause. And I am a very, very involved and active person. And when he comes home, sometimes he thinks everything's gonna go back to normal. Well, that is our normal. Come on. You know, here's a swim. I was a coach of a swim team and taught aerobics and worked as an executive director of the Chamber of Commerce and had a 2-year-old. Welcome to my world. You're just visiting for a little bit because he was gone so much. So there are adjustments that way. But there are many lessons that I have learned along my journey. First thing is live in the moment. If we live in the would've, could've, should've's, what could have happened if those guys hit his plane? I mean, he's had engine failures and all that. What could have happened? I can't live like that. So we live in the moment. Another thing is we learn to improvise, adapt, and overcome. We can improvise on anything. And I tell you, duct tape has been my best friend throughout these 30 years because I can fix anything with duct tape. And adapt. We adapt with grace, or we try to. We adapt to situations that we might not want to be in, but we do. And we overcome. We overcome because we support our spouses. And we have to overcome because we don't have a choice. Another life lesson I've learned is life is all about the journey and not necessarily the destination. So we live for the journey. Doesn't matter where we are, as long as we're all together. And probably the biggest thing that I've learned for the military is that there is a big difference between Paradise Island and Paris Island. And that is a lesson that I have taught my children very early on. So I thank you very much for letting me share a little bit of my journey as being a military spouse. And I thank you all, the veterans and the spouses, for all that you do for our country. Thank you.